Well, it's a pleasure to welcome back to the program Gerald Celente from the Trends Research Institute. Good afternoon, Gerald.
Good afternoon, Chris.
Let's begin with your latest Trends Journal report. Your journal predicted the panic of '08, the collapse of '09. Both came to pass. Well, since then, the government propped up the market with a $2 trillion emergency bailout plan, and you're now calling for crash of 2010.
We said from the very beginning with the TARP bailouts that the bailout bubble would burst, that this would only last for so long. The so long is now over. It's over in China. It's over in India. The so long is over in all of Europe. The banks, of course, the central banks pledged they would never buy up bad paper from the banks, and they're buying it up. And so there's just one after another. We just heard again from the Federal Reserve that they were going to, I love the language they use, Fed to reinvest principal on mortgage proceeds to counter slowing economy. That's white shoe boys jive to steal your money to give to the Wall Street gang. And so, no, there's the crash of 2010 is underway. We're watching the markets continue to go down, and as you well know, we believe gold is going to go way up.
Well, I'd like to discuss another theme you see on the horizon, and that's technology for the lower income sector of society. With unemployment near 10%, you expect millions of unemployed to purchase low-cost technology, and this could present big opportunities for sharp entrepreneurs out there.
And that's the thing to always remember, that there are plenty of opportunities out there. And yes, this technology for the poor is a huge trend. For example, over in India, where you have half the population living on less than $2 a day. And so what they're doing is they're making stoves, and they're making heating units and water filtration systems using the highest of high technology and refrigeration that cost very, very little money and built to scale for what they need. And this is really what the future is. But the United States doesn't seem to understand that. For example, let's look again. We just went through a crisis not more than a few years ago of gasoline prices going through the roof. Now that they've moderated, guess what the big sellers are again? Big SUVs and pickup trucks. Whether it's too big to fail or buying houses that are too big or cars that are too big, you're going in the wrong direction. The direction to go into is less is more. It's the oldest axiom in architecture and art, and it could not be truer in today's environment. Because we're going to see, this is going to be the age of the entrepreneur. Because the corporations are going to continue to slash, continue to pay low wages, and those that are going to succeed are going to go out on their own. Now, I just finished a trip around the parts of the Northeast and going to old cities on purpose that were really big during the heyday of the Industrial Revolution and the building of America that are now in disrepair. There's so much opportunity there. For these young people that are living home with mommy and daddy after graduating college, and they're hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, and the parents are paying for their cell phone bills and room and board, and let them become the entrepreneurs of tomorrow, and you could refurbish and rejuvenate these cities with architecture and building that's far superior than the garbage that they've been building now. And so there's a lot of opportunities, and yes, it's that it's not only low cost, it's quality at low price points. Those are also the considerations, because when they're making this low-tech product, or this high technology for the poor, it's the highest of high tech. They're using the innovations for building power plants that they're now using to build a small stove or refrigerator.
I recall several years ago hearing how China had actually leaped forward ahead of many other of the developing nations simply because they hadn't invested in the massive telephone and cable infrastructure that we were forced to invest in. They simply went to higher tech cell phone technology to offer practically the entire populace telephone access for just merely pennies on the dollar. In sort of a similar vein, these advances in high technology will allow entrepreneurs significant profits, and that's going to help save the domestic economy.
That's it. And that's what we have to do. We have to save the domestic economy. And the only way you do that is by buying among each other. We cannot continue to support other countries as we go down. They turned us into a service sector society, and they sold a big lie of great jobs in service, no more dirty jobs in manufacturing. Chris, think of the word service sector. Servitude, servant, serf. We went from a country of craftspeople, tradesmen, merchants, to a country now where we're cashiers and shelf stockers and clerks.
If we look at the other side of the ledger, Walmart caught a lot of flack lately from folks who claim that the local economies are suffering terribly. The mom and pop businesses, hardware stores and retailers and jewelers and things like that. If the consumer can get that product for pennies on the dollar, how are we going to put that genie back in the bottle?
Go back to why the Walmarts didn't exist before. I remember as a young man and going to college, my first year in 1965, learning about such things as the Robertson-Patman Act, the Sherman Antitrust Act. It was so that the big guys couldn't rob the rest of us blind, and you couldn't buy on huge quantity and get a huge discount. They give you a discount for shipping, but you weren't better than anybody else. So what it did is it tilted the playing field to the people that are the big financiers that could put everybody else out of business. The only way this country comes back, as I said, is when we become a nation of merchants and manufacturers, of craftspeople and tradesmen, not of serfs, servants, and servitude. Hey, you want a great job as a home health aide? I got one waiting for you.
You're also concerned about a gluttonous society, Gerald. You say we drive big SUVs, we've got big McMansions, big credit card and mortgage debts, big federal and local state deficits. Something has to give.
As you mentioned, it's not only that, it's the people themselves. The country's become obese. It's become too fat for its own good. And I know that's politically incorrect, but it's not. You can't keep eating garbage and being unhealthy and expect to function at a high level. So people ask me, what should we do? Well, the first thing is you have to get in shape spiritually, emotionally, and physically. You can't do it without it. It's not going to happen. And so we have to, and that goes back to the other trends. How about buying local? Up here in Kingston, New York, we have a farmer's market every Saturday. We're in the Hudson Valley. The place is packed, music playing, great food, the highest of quality, and people having a wonderful time. And then you compare that by going into a Walmart, which is nothing more than a huge self-storage unit with counters in it.
And a sterile environment.
Yeah. So this is what brings the country back. Go back to the Great Depression. Look at the pictures of the people. I have a photo of my parents' wedding, may their souls rest in peace, 1934. Italian immigrants got married at the height of the Depression. You should see how these people look, how dignified, what shape they're in, how respectful of themselves they are, how dignified. And that's what this country has to go back to, rather than the gross gangster look of stupidity that's become the pop culture in this country. Why, would you ever imagine Dwight D. Eisenhower on The View?
We're talking about gluttonous behavior, and I think millions have been sort of lulled into complacency due to this corn syrup that's injected into practically every product that we purchase today. Do you think that the manufacturers require some blame?
Yeah, I was awarded an honorary doctorate from National University of Health Sciences for the work I've done over the years in complementary medicine. I wouldn't take this stuff. You have high cholesterol? Yes, change your diet. Try that one. That'll be radical. And you mentioned about the fructose. Now, the story just came out on Reuters about cancer cells slurp up fructose. Oh, yeah, what a surprise. There's a way out of this, Chris. But again, people have to get healthy spiritually, emotionally, and physically. Only the strong are going to survive the greatest coming depression.